Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope you all had a great weekend. In fact, I hope you had a better weekend than Jordan Spieth did. Did any of you catch that? I did. Watched a lot of the Masters this weekend. I didn't think I would since my man Phil Mickelson didn't make the cut. Man, did he not look good. Seems like he missed, I kind of gave up, in my opinion. It seemed, I mean, I know he just missed the cut by a shot, but still, it seemed like halfway through that round on Friday, he said, well, this just isn't going my way, and I don't have a shot, and tried to get back into it, I think, towards the end. If he had made that putt on the 18, he would have made the cut, but I'm not even so sure how much he cared about it. He has to be dejected, but I thought that once he was out of it, I'd lose interest. But then I ended up spending some time up at my brother's place in Largo Saturday and yesterday. His wife was out of town. She and some friends went out of town. So I went up. We had some good guy time, just sitting around eating and watching sports and stuff. And we ended up watching quite a bit of the Masters on Saturday than Sunday. And, you know, I know how I feel. Like in my disc golfing, which I haven't been doing much of, by the way, this year. Just other things, got more important things going on. I know how I felt when I have not played well at some of my tournaments. I'm just some hacker out there. I'm just some hacker in the intermediate division. Yes, I won a couple tournaments in my division last year, which was fun. But there are times, last year and before then, where I had expectations, did not meet expectations, and I couldn't leave that tournament place fast enough. I could not wait to get in my car and get the hell out of there. And so I was thinking about that yesterday when I saw Jordan Spieth put those two balls into the water on number 12. And then have to, at the end, of course, go from a big lead to being behind. And then having to afterwards do the interviews, do the jacket ceremony. Just cannot even imagine it. And I give him all the credit in the world. I'm not even a big fan of his. I'll just be honest with you. I was not rooting for him this weekend, even though he was an American and he was trying to beat some of those British guys who were up there. The guy who ended up winning, Danny Willett, Lee Westwood, a couple of the others. I was not rooting for him. I like seeing multiple people win. If my man Phil Mickelson can't win, then I'm rooting for the field. So for somebody who hasn't won a major before. That's just the way I am. And so I was not even rooting for him, but I did feel for him. He did that one interview, and right afterwards, I forget what that guy's name is, the reporter, but you could tell he was just broken up, and I'm sure that at some point after 18, and the ceremony and him leaving that place to go back to his home, I guess he's from Texas, I'm going to say he had a little bit of a cry session, and I got no problem with that. I think he probably broke down in a private place, in a bathroom, in an office, somewhere where he could find a couple minutes by himself to just kind of let it all out. All right? Much like maybe Greg Norman did back in the day and other golfers who have choked over the years. And it was a little bit of a choke. I could see putting one in the water on 12, but two, especially that second one that wasn't even close. I mean, you got to be thinking you got to hit land with that second shot, but he didn't do it. But it was fascinating what happens when people get under pressure, not just in sports, but with anything. Your body tenses up, you start having negative thoughts, and it happens to the best of people in any profession. Some people, and no guarantee, if you handle it well this time, there's no guarantee that you're going to handle it well next time. I know I've felt the pressure in my life in important things and not so important things, and you're just amazed. Sometimes it's easy to step up to the plate, and sometimes other times your mind just locks up. So that was, and right before he hit that shot in the water, I was sitting there with my brother Brian and said, you watch, he's going to put this in the water. And didn't he just do it? And I guess he did it back in 2014 when he lost to Bubba Watson as well. My Pirates, they lost to the Reds. They got to learn how to get hits with men on base. That's their problem. I think they're going to be fine ultimately, but I just don't think that the lineup is tweaked. It needs some tweaking, and I think it'll help when Jung Ho-Gung gets back. So I'm hoping that they get back into their winning ways, but they're getting on base, just can't drive the guys across home plate. So let's get right to the show. Being that I talked about sports for the first 5 minutes, just some things. You know how I like to include personal stuff, and what I just don't want to get on here and start spewing political ideas and opinions for you. I want you to know that I do have a life outside of doing this show. I'm a very three-dimensional guy. But it is a little bit of a coincidence then that I'm going to start the show today with another sports story that is somewhat at least a little bit political. And that is the women's team, the women's national team for the United States, the soccer team, that has filed a gender discrimination suit against the powers that be in soccer. And this story has been out there, was it before or after Abby Wambach got caught drinking charm? I'm going to say before that. So it's probably going on a couple weeks that this story has been out there, but just haven't gotten around to it. But what caught my eye, the reason I'm talking about it now, is they are now threatening that if their case isn't heard and they don't get some justice in this, that they will boycott the Olympics in Brazil this summer. And I wonder how people who have supported the women's team are going to feel about that. I'm wondering, fans, people who have gone to the games. You know me in soccer. I will admit that I watch it if the men's team is playing the national team. I don't watch soccer otherwise. I just don't. I don't like it. I don't find it especially compelling. But if the United States is involved in something, I want us to be the best at it. That's just who I am. So that idea overruns my idea that that soccer is a sport for the rest of the world and is really not meant for the United States. Having said all that and getting back to the women, I'm just wondering if when they start threatening a boycott, if that's going too far. To me, that's what it feels like. I know that they have an issue with the way they're getting paid. Now, let's talk about that first, maybe. That's where we want to start. Why do they get paid less than the men do? Even though in the United States, it seems anyway that the women are as popular as the men. The women have had more international success than the men, and it's not even close. The women maybe are even in the United States more nationally known, recognizable than some of the men on the national team. I think you could say all of that. The women have had more success. They get more support in the United States, you could say. Their soccer is taken a little bit more serious than men's soccer in the United States. And then on top of that, they are more recognizable, once again, let's put it this way. If Clint Dempsey, who is the best American player now, would get caught drinking and driving, and you just put your photo up there, would anybody really recognize him? Would anybody recognize him? Maybe. Abby Wambach, to me, is more recognizable. And some of these other women who are still on the team, Abby Wambach is retired. Some of these other women who are still playing, Hope Solo, for example, with all the trouble she's had in and out of soccer, and some of the others, I think that they are more recognizable. Much like you could say that Serena Williams, American tennis player, is more recognizable than any men's tennis player, American men's American tennis player now. In fact, she's probably recognizable as Novak Djokovic, who's the best tennis player on the planet now. So, there's all of this stuff going on in how we look at it in the United States, that it's this very weird situation where, in the end, despite all of this fame that the women have and the success, they still get paid less than the men do. Why is that? The truth is their pay almost has nothing to do with how they are seen in the United States. That's a large part of it. It's also the exact reason that as much as coverage as the Women's World Cup gets, it's not even close to the Men's World Cup. It's not even close. And in fact, when you're looking at the United States and how popular their women's team is, our women's team is compared to our men's team, and I'm not saying the men don't get support, they do. But it's the only country in the world where the women's team is even seen to be on the same level as the men's team. As far as, yes, do some of these other countries have women's teams that get a lot of attention? Yes. Brazil, yes. Japan, yes. In fact, Japan might be in the United States in that the women's team may get as much attention as the Japanese men's team. The women's team and the men's team might be almost equal, but that's a rarity. You go to all these other countries, even if it's Germany, the Netherlands, Russia, Italy, Spain, England, all of them, the men's team gets way more attention. It's not even close than the women's team. And so when it comes down to the economics of this and ticket sales and endorsements and everything else, you know what endorsers know? The endorsers know that despite the men's team just being about the same level as the American women's team, endorsers know that whatever team the United States is playing, that men's team is way more popular than the men's team is, than the American men's team is. If they play the Germans, the Italians, the British, the Spanish, whoever, the Brazilians, whoever else, the Mexicans. And when I say the Mexicans, I mean the team from Mexico. That team gets more attention, is more well-known than the men's team. So the men's team, the reason it gets paid the way it does is because it's riding on the coattails of other countries. The American team does not get paid because of the popularity that it has in the United States necessarily. They get paid because men's soccer is the number one men's sport in the rest of the world. It just doesn't happen to be that way in the United States. In fact, when it comes to men's soccer, it's not probably even in the top 5 in the United States. We're just kind of different. What can I say? And there may be another couple other countries that are like that too. Maybe Canada, same way. It may be there that their Canadian women's team is as well known or is more popular than men's team. Maybe. But also, I think that is a factor of, in Canada, there's just other sports that men play that are more popular than soccer. You got, of course, hockey, lacrosse. They also have Canadian rules football. They have other things that they do up there besides soccer. And, of course, soccer is an outdoor sport, and it's tough to play soccer outside in the snow when there's snow on the ground. So there's that. So the men's team in the United States is riding the coattails, the economic status of men's teams in the rest of the world. Now, what do we know about women's teams in the rest of the world? None of them are as popular as the American women. They just aren't. There are women's leagues in these other countries, but the reason there are leagues is because in those countries, soccer is so popular, period. You see what I'm saying there? The reason that soccer, for example, is popular in Germany is because men play it. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Women don't like hearing that, but that's a fact. That's just one example. And so because the German men, the sport being popular, it's one of the number one sports, once again, in the rest of the world. But it's number one sport because of the men, not because of the women. And then the women get involved, they play well, and then some people watch that too. But none of those women's teams are even close to the men's teams. And so I'm sure in all these other countries, and if you don't know, there are some soccer players in the world who make outrageous amounts of money for playing a team sport. It is outrageous. And good for them, but really, it's crazy, crazy money. Why? Because soccer is a world sport. That's why. Lionel Messi, Ronaldo, or whoever these other guys are, they make tons of money playing in a team sport, which is unusual. Just to give you an example, in the United States, look at what Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods have made over the years playing golf, an individual sport. Then you look at the number one earner, even in baseball, Alex Rodriguez, and the crazy contract he's had for the last 10, 15 years. The amount of money he's made has not come close to what those two golfers have made. Individual sports, you have an opportunity to make a lot more money than in team sports. But when it comes to soccer, those guys do quite well for playing in a team sport. All right? Once again, because they're popular, there's lots of ways to market them, not just in their country, but around the world. And once again, American men's soccer benefits from that. The endorsers know that, at some point, the sponsors know that at some point the American men, they're going to play Brazil with all their famous players, and there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game. Of course, they call it a match. And if where's Lionel Messi from? He's from Argentina, right? Argentina. If he plays for Argentina, and it's the United States versus Argentina, they know the whole world is going to be on that game. And if the United States plays Germany, the Netherlands, any of these teams, all these sponsors, whether they're American companies or not, know that all the eyeballs are going to be on those teams, on those matches, on those games. But with the American women, that's not necessarily the case. Despite them being as good as they are, despite them having the success that they have, and despite a few of their players being known. The problem is, none of these women are known outside of the United States. That's economics for you. That's economics. That's just the way it is. I know it sucks, but that's the way it works out. There is nothing there's no discrimination going on here, despite their contention that the American women's team makes as much money for the United States and U.S. soccer as the men's team does. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. You got to remember something about sports. No professional sports exist without people going to watch the games and TV and sponsors and all these companies that want to advertise during the games. Professional sports does not exist without it. You could not run a professional sports league just on people going to see the games alone. Without radio, without TV, without the internet, there just would not be enough money to go around. Yes, these players would make a couple bucks. That'd be it. It'd be like, you know what it'd kind of be like? It'd be like what a professional can make in disc golf. Number one player, Paul Macbeth. He's probably the greatest player to ever play the game. Some people are making that argument right now. He's in his late 20s, kicks butt at every major tournament, and he doesn't even make, I don't think, even with sponsorships, if he makes $75,000 a year, I would be stunned. and he's the number one player in the world. Why? Not on TV, not on radio. You don't have to pay to go see these tournaments, and the only sponsors really involved in disc golf right now are companies that are connected to disc golf. You don't have any car companies or insurance companies dishing out big bucks to sponsor any of this stuff because there's just no eyeballs for it right now. And women's soccer is quite a bit above disc golf in the United States, but it's certainly not to the level where the women's players should be getting paid as much as men's players do. Once again, United States men's players benefit from the popularity of the sport elsewhere, whereas the problem is the women's game in the United States, they're the most popular team in the world, and still around the world, I don't know how many people could pick any of them out of a lineup. In addition to the fact that, it's weird that it's kind of this paradox that the women's American team is easily, year by year, the best in the world. Easily. I know they've lost a World Cup here and there to Japan, but overall, consistently, the last 20 years, overall, the best in the world. But you can't field a women's soccer league in the United States, whereas a lot of these other countries do have women's soccer leagues that do quite well. Once again, Germany, Brazil, other places. That's the bizarreness of it. And once again, it comes back to popularity. How popular is the sport in a particular country? And what are the economics of what happens when that sport or that team, that country's team, is put on a national stage? It's all connected. So there's the economics of that. Maybe a good comparison also would be like American football. People, yes, there are people in other countries that watch American football. They tune it in, whether illegally on the internet or they have some package. Even though they're not an American, maybe they don't even speak English, maybe they're fascinated by it and everything. And we think that the Super Bowl is the biggest thing in the world, but the numbers are dwarfed by the amount of people that watch soccer in the world when it comes to the World Cup. That's a fact. The Super Bowl numbers on TV in the world are dwarfed by the World Cup numbers. But the difference is, in the United States, football is the most popular sport. A lot of people play it. A lot of men play it. Even we have women playing it now. People love to get together on Sundays and watch the games, and a lot of money generated from it. Even though, once again, the sport isn't popular elsewhere. So it'd be crazy if some sports league popped up American football in Italy, and then playing football that isn't even maybe high school level, that those players should get paid as much as the players in the United States do. It's just not popular. That's once again how the economics works there. So it's all interconnected, especially in soccer, where it is an international sport, where American football really isn't. Baseball, kind of. In Japan, South Korea, kind of. But maybe not even that either. We just have our sports. Maybe basketball. There's an international sport where you can play in many different countries and make some nice money. Not as much as in the NBA, but you can do okay. It's better than digging ditches. But women's soccer, the reason the women don't make as much money, despite all this money coming in, the money is coming in from the men's game because the men play the best players in the world. What they make is not truly indicative of how good the American team is or any one particular player. It's who they play and how popular the sport they're playing is. Women's soccer just isn't that popular overall. Now, as far as them boycotting the Olympics, I got to tell you, I think that'd make a big mistake on their part. If they're trying to get sympathy, trying to get their way, I think what they would find out, see, when you do something like that, they must think that they are in a position of power to do that. And they have to remember something, I think, the American women. The Olympics are going to go on whether they are there or not. It's not like every other women's soccer team that's going to be at the Olympics is going to say, oh, the Americans aren't playing, well, we're going to boycott too. They're not going to do that. That's the first thing. You'd think from what happened in 1980 with the Americans with us boycotting the Olympics in Moscow, that we would have learned that. That didn't teach anybody anything. That was liberal thinking. We'll make them suffer, we just won't show up. Oh yeah, we really made them suffer. Yeah, we really showed them. Those Soviets going into Afghanistan, we really showed them. I think what will happen if the American women do this is that they will find out exactly, well, it might be a good thing, and when they're going to find out why they don't get paid as much as the men do. Because they won't be there and nobody will care. The Olympics will go on. The soccer matches will happen. They're going to have golf this year. All the track and field events, the marathon, basketball, whatever else. And it'll be an afterthought the American women aren't there. They'll be talked about during those 2 weeks of the Olympics because you have a bunch of liberal sports reporters, and then it'll be over. And afterwards, these women will be sitting at home thinking, you know what? I could have had a gold medal. Instead, I didn't get more money that I wanted, and I don't have a gold medal. This sucks. And once again, it also would be they're putting their own pocketbooks in front of representing their country. All right? And they're going to have to contrast that with these golfers, for example, who make a lot of money. I mean, you can never win. As long as you keep your Q card, qualifying card in the PGA, you can never win a tournament and still live a pretty nice life. Really, really live a nice life. But for these guys, despite how much money they're making, they'll go to the Olympics not getting paid anything just to win, working for free to go down there and have a chance at winning a gold medal. And then the American women are going to not go because they're not getting paid enough. See, that's the way I think a lot of people are going to look at this. Here these guys are, they're willing to represent their country for free just to win that gold medal. The American women aren't. See, this is what happens when you get into these situations, and when you do, and once again, it all starts not from a sense of ego. I don't think it all starts from a sense of not understanding economics and being liberals. Let's just call it what it is. That's where it starts. They think that they should be paid just because they play the same sport that men do. There's a lot more that goes into it. Now, I know out here in the non-sports world, it's a little bit different. A male lawyer, a female lawyer, pretty much the same popularity, doing the same job. If the market says that they should make the same, then they should make the same. Well, and it's going to be much more likely that they do. Not in sports. Not in sports. You have those rare exceptions. Serena Williams. But once again, tennis, national sport. Tennis, popular sport. Women from all over the world playing it. It's not a team game. It's an individual game, which makes it different. She's been around for a lot of years. She's been dominating tennis for about 15 years. And so, once again, that's a little bit different than what we're talking about regarding women's soccer. Women can't look at and point at Serena Williams and say, look, she's getting paid as much as the men are. Why aren't we? It's different. It just is. Just have to take it sport by sport, country by country. In the end, it's very easy to understand why the women's soccer don't get paid as much as the men in the United States. It has nothing to do with us hating women. It's just the way how the dollars flow. I got to go to the break. You're listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Talk radio the way the founding fathers would have done it.
I'm just a man trying to make his mark on history.
Red State Talk Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit with the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed. Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at nemoarms.com.
Less than 2% of America's population volunteers to defend our nation. Though we rarely see them, we live the benefits of these heroes' sacrifices in the freedom we know and the safety we feel. Each and every day, the Gary Sinise Foundation serves our nation by honoring our defenders, veterans, first responders, and their families. We do this by creating and supporting unique programs designed to entertain, educate, inspire, strengthen, and build communities. The Gary Sinise Foundation has grown because the need has never been greater. Together, we'll improve the lives of thousands of American heroes and their families day in, day out, all year long. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, our veterans, our first responders, and the families who stand by them, we can always do a little more. Join us. Visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
Hi, I'm Gil Fulbright. The people who run my campaign, they've made this commercial, and I'm in it. This campaign, it's not about me. It's about crafting a version of me that'll appeal to you. A version that visits random work sites with paid actors pointing at things. A version of me that doesn't find old people loathsome or pointless. Has a conventionally attractive yet curiously still family. Listening to my constituents, legislating, these are things I don't do. What I do is spend about 70% of my time raising funds for re-election. I'd do anything to stay in office. My name's Gil Fulbright, but hell, I'll change my name to Phil Goldbright, or Bill Fulbright, or fill up my mouth with farts. These are the things that are important to me. And these are the fine people that finance my campaign. Now, in order to do these things, I have to stay in office. And to stay in office, I have to keep these guys happy. Now, if any of these things make these guys unhappy, well, my hands are tied. So come November, the choice is clear. You want another spineless mouthpiece for special interest in lobbyists? Or a spineless mouthpiece for special interest in lobbyists? I'm filling my mouth with farts, and I approve this message.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. In the break, I was just thinking to myself, did I really just spend an entire half hour talking about women's soccer? Not an entire half hour. It ended up being like 25 minutes about women's soccer. Wow. I guess I can do it. Never would have thought that was possible, that I could talk about women's soccer for 25 minutes. But you start getting... when you start talking about the economics and alleged discrimination in the Olympics and boycotts, you got to talk about it. And I think that women in particular can learn a lot from that. Because I'm going to say that your average sports person probably looks at that topic and does wonder, why don't the women make us at least your average American soccer fan probably does sit there and wonder why the women don't make as much as the men. Well, there are reasons. It's not a conspiracy. It's not like they think they can take advantage of the women. This goes back to it wasn't the World Cup, but it was this big tournament they had in Canada. When was it? Last year? The women said it was discrimination that they needed to play they were going to be forced to play on AstroTurf, artificial turf instead of grass. Remember that? And they filed a discrimination suit or some Title IX type of thing, discrimination against women, just because the stadium had artificial turf instead of grass. When you start hearing that, then I guess it should be no surprise. Not much later, they're saying that they're being discriminated against because they aren't getting paid as much as the men. And now they want to boycott. The idea has come up to boycott the Olympics. I got to ask you, at what point does it just become too big of a hassle? At what point? They'll say, well, you'd never do this to men. Yeah, I know. It's just different. It's all driven by money. Sports is driven by money. Sports is entertainment. That's all it is. And the people who run it decide, is this going to be entertaining to the viewers? Is this not going to be entertaining to the viewers? If it's not going to be entertaining, then they don't do it. If they think it's entertaining enough, they go with it. And they determined that women playing on artificial turf was entertaining enough. That should tell you something. All you women soccer players out there who are women or men who think that the women should be paid as much as the men and that maybe they should boycott the Olympics. The truth is, the people who run soccer in the world, really, they do it. They want to help the women out. They know that it gets some ratings. But in the end, if women don't want to play soccer anymore, they really don't care. The truth is that men's soccer supports women's soccer in the world overall. Not in the United States, but overall. Likewise, in the United States, the NBA, with LeBron James and the rest of them, support the WNBA. Without the NBA, there is no WNBA. Nothing. There's nothing. Just the way it is. Just the way it is. Whereas I'm not sure you can say that about tennis. I'm not sure you could say that about golf. I'm not sure. Even though I know golf, women's golf, is nowhere close to as popular as men's golf. The advantage, though, is way more women play golf than they play soccer. At least sticking with it throughout their lives. Why? Because you can play golf your whole life. Soccer, you can't. See, when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of all this, there are a lot of different aspects you have to look at. And there's a lot of things that add up eventually to the fact that women don't make as much as men in soccer. There are many, many reasons and have nothing to do with any sort of hatred of women or anything. It's a fascinating topic. And I think a lot of people probably just blow right by the story, but there's a lot you can learn about free markets, capitalism, free enterprise, even trade by looking this particular issue. Really, you can. So let's move on to something else. I was reading this article, and this is an article from last week. Didn't get to it, but it's still relevant today. Voters in California. A study has found, doing some polling there, as you know already, there's a lot of polling that's going on in California. People concerned about what's going to happen in the Republican primary there between Trump, Cruz, and Kasich. And they just don't poll these people and ask them who they're going to vote for. They ask them some other questions, try to break it down into demographics. And what they're finding is a lot of people who voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger in that recall election, when was that, 10 years ago now? What year was that, 2006, 2005, 2004, somewhere in there? A lot of people who voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger in the recall, and then when he got reelected, are the same people who are going to vote for Trump in California this time around, once again, about 10 years later. Also found that Republicans who did not vote for Arnold Schwarzenegger and voted for this guy McClintock, I forget his first name, didn't write it down, were more likely to vote for Ted Cruz or John Kasich. Now, what do I get out of this? Now, we know how well things went in California after Arnold Schwarzenegger got elected in the recall and got reelected. We know how it went. California did not get better. And in fact, a lot of the reason that California has gotten into the problems it has is because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just because of him. Now, granted, there were problems before him, but he didn't fix any of them. It got worse. He tried to do a couple things, and then when he started getting resistance, he just totally gave in on everything and went along with the liberals on every single issue, even though he led people to believe that he wouldn't. Now, what's funny to me is I know this. I've been to California. I went to California, had worked down there while he was governor of California, from about 2006 to 2010. I used to go to California for some work in San Diego, LA area, San Bernardino. Yes, I've been to San Bernardino where the shooting was. I've been there. Right down the street, as a matter of fact, from where the shooting happened. But still, I never lived there, but I know what happened to California. I know the kind of governor that Arnold Schwarzenegger was. In fact, most people who are conservatives know what kind of governor he was. Even though most people have never been to California, they know he sucked. So if we all know it out here, then all those people who live in California, they must know it too, right? And all those people who voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger, they must know it too. They know what's going on in their state. They know that if I know it, they know it about the droughts that they're having, somewhat caused because of government policy. Despite the population going up, no power plants being built, more likely ones getting shut down. People moving away from California. I had the story last week or the week before. In the year 2014, over 250,000 people moved from California to Texas. Texas alone. Heck, I have an ex-girlfriend of mine who I talk to once in a while who is made for California. The business that she's in is made for California. She's talking about leaving. If she's talking about leaving, then I would think it's possible that everybody could leave that state. And still, Trump, there will be people who voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger, know what he did, and then are going to vote for Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump is just like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Do you see why this drives us nuts? All you Trump supporters, and I know you listen to this show too, do you understand why this drives us all nuts? You already fell for one guy who was going to be governor of California and break up the monopolies or whatever, or I'm making that up, but whatever he said he was going to do. You already fell for that. Pop culture icon, movie star, and now you're going to come around and vote for that same type of guy again. All that teaches us, the rest of us, is that you haven't learned your lesson at all. And now do you understand why we think that you're stupid? I saw something this weekend. Well, these people are calling Trump supporters uneducated. That's not very nice, and that's not smart, and you're putting these people down. I don't think they're uneducated. There's plenty of people who have high school, college educations who are voting for Donald Trump. Still, that doesn't make them smart. Being educated, as far as having some degree, does not make you smart. I make the point. This country was built on the backs of a bunch of people who didn't have any formal education. A lot of people couldn't even speak English, or they couldn't write it. They could speak it, but couldn't write it. Couldn't read, couldn't write. Could speak it, couldn't read, couldn't write. And it took a bunch of people with PhDs and MDs and JDs and all these advanced degrees to truly screw this country up. Just remember that. So it's not that I think that they're uneducated. I just think they're stupid. And I don't mind saying it. They think I'm stupid. Might as well just throw it right back at them. Whereas at least we can say, those of us who are never Trumpers, that we are looking at a candidate like Ted Cruz and we see something different. We see something different. He's obviously not Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's obviously not Jesse Ventura. He's obviously not a lot of these other wishy-washy guys and women who have run for political office, said one thing and then got in and did another. It's not what Ted Cruz has done. Not perfect guy. Not a perfect guy. Not a perfect politician. Nobody's perfect because we're all human. I have to say that every time this topic comes up. But he's pretty much done what he said he was going to do when he went to represent Texas as a senator from Texas. And so we just see something different. Whereas we look at you, we think that you're falling for more of the same, specifically in California. The only difference is Donald Trump seems to speak a little bit better English than Arnold Schwarzenegger does. That's about it. But if anybody's surprised by the poll, I don't know why they would be. Makes total sense. That if there's anybody that's going to support Donald Trump in California, it would be Arnold Schwarzenegger voters. And the reason we would expect that is we just kind of think that these people just don't learn their lesson. If you haven't learned your lesson already about Donald Trump, after 8 months of his campaign where he'll say anything under the sun, every promise has an expiration date, just became a Republican a year ago. And of course, if you're paying attention this weekend, you saw the story how his one son and his daughter are not going to be, they're residents of New York, but they're not even going to be able to vote for their father in New York. You know why? Not because they're not registered to vote. They are registered to vote. Guess what? They're not registered as Republicans. Imagine that. I am shocked. I am shocked that they're registered. They're not registered as Republicans. Now, his other son can. He's registered in New York as a Republican. The other two kids are not. Very, very interesting. Now, they've known that their father was running for president for as long as the rest of us have. In fact, they had more inkling of it than any of us did, even before he announced. And it was pretty much known by about October, November, December that he'd probably be sticking around long enough to run in New York. So why didn't his kids get their registration changed to Republican so they could vote for him? Probably because they didn't know. Probably just like the Trump organization gets fooled on all of these different rules regarding delegates. It's just, at one point, does this all become just a comedy? As if something that William Shakespeare would write regarding the Donald Trump campaign. The attacks on women, him not being a Republican until about a year ago, just flip-flopping on all these issues. His kids aren't even registered to vote for him. His campaign manager attacking a woman. You know, all of the stories. At what point does it become like a farce that William Shakespeare would have written at the height of his churning out of all of the stuff that he wrote? At his height of his popularity, William Shakespeare would have wrote this. But instead, Trump supporters say we're supposed to take him seriously. But then you add on top of it that those same people voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006 in the recall, and then now they're going to support the same type of guy in 2016 in a primary. It's all crazy. It's all crazy. And there is nothing that they can say about the choices that we make regarding our politicians that come close. You can say whatever you want about Ted, whether it's true or not. And there's a lot of falsehoods out there. And I can understand why some people don't like him, don't like the way he comes across, and he's self-serving and everything else. Nothing comes close to the Trump phenomenon and the bizarreness of it. Nothing. Nothing. So you go live with yourselves, all you Schwarzenegger supporters and Trump supporters. You got exactly what you wanted, I guess, with Arnold Schwarzenegger in California. You must have liked it, and that's why you want to vote for it again. Right? All you Schwarzenegger supporters in California, did you like what he did as governor of California? If the answer is yes, then you should be all registered Democrats and shouldn't vote for Donald Trump anyway. Period. All right? But if you are Republicans and liked or didn't like what Arnold Schwarzenegger did as governor, then I don't see how you can't see that Donald Trump is the same exact guy. I just don't see how I can't see it. I don't know. That's crazy. Let's move on to one more thing before I leave you tonight. Transgendered bathrooms. I know. You're talking about women's soccer. You're talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And now you're talking about transgendered bathrooms. I know. Crazy show tonight. What can I tell you? The University of Toronto, and you shouldn't be probably surprised by this, that Canada has been very much more out front regarding this issue than the United States is. Canada came up with this transgendered bathroom thing well before it ever became a big topic in the United States. But now, the University of Toronto looks like it's going to go back to the old-fashioned way of just having men's bathrooms and women's bathrooms. It hasn't exactly turned out to be like Ally McBeal. Now, I'm showing my age there from 20 years ago. Remember the show Ally McBeal? What was her name? Callista Flockhart was the main. She was Ally McBeal. And she ended up marrying Harrison Ford. But in that show, they had a transgender bathroom. One bathroom for everybody. Remember that? I wonder how many people remember that. Why I remember that? I didn't even watch that show, and I knew that. And it all seems so quaint. People going into the stalls, and everything's so nice and clean and everything else. You know what? As a guy, I don't even like going into a men's bathroom. You know, I wish everywhere I could go was just my own private bathroom. That's the kind of person. I'm not even like this germaphobe or anything. The truth is, the only people who are going to like this kind of transgendered, one bathroom fits all type of people are kooks. And what is the University of Toronto found out? This kind of one bathroom for everybody, women and men being in the same bathroom together. You know what it creates? It creates peeping toms. Imagine that. I know it's mostly because of men, because we're a bunch of freaks. You know, anything to see a woman naked, right? But that's what you have to deal with. That's why I keep bringing up. Conservatism is the best system that goes along with human nature. Conservatism does not support bathrooms for both sexes at the same time. All right? Because it gets in the way of human nature because we know it's going to happen. And even the University of Toronto has now seen it. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can go to edwarddentzel.com to find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at YouTube, SoundCloud, Podomatic, and Podbean. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book, where you can download for free the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. Find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. I can talk. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.